Now, where are you from?
Detroit.
Still living in Detroit?
No, I'm in Atlanta currently.
Okay.
I left Detroit about 5 years ago.
How old were you?
That would be 24.
Okay. What was the reason?
Music. I seen that Atlanta had a big market for music, and it was like, go make something bigger happen than just being an inner city rapper.
Detroit is buzzing, though. Detroit is bubbling.
Nah, it is.
The scene over there.
It's crazy right now because, like, it's a big bubble scene. But when I left, it wasn't bubbling. That's what's crazy. Like, when I left, there wasn't no T Grizzly that was making a big impression. Big Sean was out, but even Dej Loaf just derived in that same 5-year window. So it was not a major scene. It was only Big Sean and Eminem that really had made it out. So it wasn't a huge, like right now it's crazy. It's a crazy scene right now. And
a lot of rappers coming out of Detroit.
Heavy rappers, heavy.
Female rappers too.
Mm-hmm. And I worked with a few of the rappers that's coming out, and I actually was one of the first people to do something major with FMBDZ, who's really buzzing right now. He's going crazy. So it's a good thing in Detroit right now.
Is it a certain part of Detroit you represent?
Yeah, the West Side. I'm from the West Side.
Now, you moving to Atlanta, how was that experience for you?
It was crazy because I never experienced Atlanta's hospitality, how they move and how they so warm and they all for what you're doing. It's not like a one-on-one thing. It's like you can go anywhere and do anything with anybody. They just open up a market, and it's really what you take from it and what you put into it to get to where you're trying to go.
Musically, before I ask this question, when you chose Atlanta, were you making trips already to Atlanta and seeing the scene and doing things before you actually made the decision to go to Atlanta, or was this one of those crash moves like, hey, next stop Atlanta, that's it?
Yeah, nah, that's what's crazy. Like, I had been to Atlanta a couple of times, but it wasn't never about music when I was here. And when I made that decision, it was based off of that Atlanta has a huge music market and that I seen the vision at the end of the day. Like, I had original plans to go from state to state and then wind up in Atlanta, but it was like I was gonna tour even before to figure out where I really wanted to be. But once I got to Atlanta, I was stuck.
There's a major connection as far as Detroit and Atlanta. Obviously, it's got its own history and street history and culture between Detroit and Atlanta. But a lot of Detroit rappers come to Atlanta. And there's also a direct connection with Detroit and the Bay.
Mm-hmm.
Was that ever a thought?
It wasn't. It wasn't a thought. And I didn't even, to be honest, I didn't even see the big connection to the Bay until recently, and I see how it's a real big connection. But when I decided to move to Atlanta, I didn't even know that connection was that deep in the Bay like that. So I just recently started understanding that part of it.
Mm. Now, when you moved to Atlanta, music industry-wise, were you accepted? Because just because an artist moves to Atlanta doesn't mean they're accepted in the Atlanta music industry or the Atlanta music culture. Sometimes people will move to Atlanta and they're accepted and they become part of, a fixture in that scene. And some people, they come and they become outcasts outside of that circle or outside of that scene. I guess that's the best way to describe it. Were you accepted by the Atlanta music industry for hip-hop music or no?
I think that I was. It may be up for debate. I mean, some people may say nay, some people may say yay. But I think that I was only because of what I'm doing currently. Like, I work with everybody in Atlanta, and I do a pretty good job at what I'm doing. And I've never really had too much altercations about anything that I've ever done from the beginning of my career to where I'm at now. And really, like, at the end of the day, I look at it like the whole Atlanta, really, they all fuck with me at the end of the day. I gotta be honest, like, I don't have nobody who wish bad upon me or any of that, because, like, Atlanta's like a family now. Like, this my second home for real.
Do you think the Atlanta music scene is cliquish? Sometimes when people come to a city, it can't, because you mentioned it's open, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's not cliquish. Do you find the Atlanta music market to be cliquish?
No, it definitely is. It's definitely cliques and languages that you either know or you don't know, and that's just how it is. At the end of the day, it's open, but it's not open to just you being with anything and doing anything. At the end of the day, you run with a pack of people. That's kind of what you run with. At the end of the day, you still gotta build your brand and build what you're doing up with a certain set of people, because it's not just you can just go anywhere and do anything. That's not what I was saying. It's more of, it's open to where you got an opportunity, you can seek it, you can go get it. At the end of the day, if you believe in it, you just got to find the right people that's doing what you're doing, because everybody music isn't the same. Everybody clique isn't the same. You know, at the end of the day, it's just like Detroit or anywhere else where there is all types of crazy stuff that goes on between artists, between cliques, between people. At the end of the day, and you got to know what you're dealing with when you're jumping out there.
Now, did you feel like you were accepted right away into that? Because you said it's up for debate, but you do feel like you were accepted. Did you feel accepted right away? Was it a certain amount of time before you actually felt, okay, I'm in here, they mess with me, yeah, I'm in?
I think that it kind of happened organically. It wasn't immediately, because when I first came here, my first tape sounded just like Detroit. So I had to mesh what Detroit does and what Atlanta does. And when I did that, the blend was phenomenal. I mean, people play my records now and they're like, this is some of the best shit I ever heard. But when I first came, it was like they were still trying to get hip to it, because like I said, when I first came to Atlanta, the Detroit scene wasn't that popping. So people would hear the beats, people would hear the language, and it would be like they didn't really understand it. But now when I can put that language with the beats, that's Atlanta, now it's like they get it, only because of people like T Grizzly and things that have derived from Detroit. Detroit style music wasn't global. Now it's like that's a language.
So you've been in Atlanta for approximately 5 years.
Yeah.
How much time do you think it was before you felt like, I'm in?
Probably about two years, maybe. About 2 years before I really felt like I was in. But now where I feel like I'm all the way there now. But it was probably 2 years in where I was like, nah, the people in Atlanta, they fucking with me. The people, they vibing with my music, they vibing with my movement. Like, I created a whole playing field for people to even, like, I helped artists develop myself now. So it's like I did something that a lot of people, if they're just trying to be an artist, they wouldn't ever did. So they would have just been about themselves. But I've done and helped a lot of careers in Atlanta, and I'm still independent at the end of the day. So that's why I think that the more acceptance came, because what I give back.
You were in your mid-20s when you moved. Do you think that, looking back, hindsight 2020, do you feel that was the right age for you to make that move? Do you wish you would have moved to Atlanta sooner in your life? Do you wish you would have just stayed in Detroit and, you know, because like we talked about, Detroit is bubbling right now, and it has been recently for the past couple of years. Do you feel like you should have just waited it out and then been a part of this bubble?
I don't feel like I should have waited it out. Only because, and I don't feel like I should have did it before either, because literally before prison, I never even wanted to rap like that. It was after I came home that it was one of my aspirations. And the minute I got off papers, it was like, it's time to go. Because if I felt like I would just fall back into some other stuff that I didn't need to, versus go make something and take off. So it was like, to leave gave me more motivation. I don't feel that I could have done what I'm doing now there in Detroit, because I would have had to rap a certain way, and I would have had to bring a certain energy to my movement. And it's a completely different style, and I've done things that most people that's from Detroit or that raps Detroit, they would have never done a lot of the things that I've done with music. So I know that I shouldn't have stayed, for sure.
So it was the right time?
Yeah, it was the perfect time.
Somebody watching this, let's say they're considering moving to Atlanta from whatever city they're in. Doesn't necessarily have to be Detroit, for music. And it doesn't necessarily have to be from a rapper standpoint. It could be a DJ, a producer, whatever the case may be. Circumstances could be different for everybody. But is there any general advice you would have for somebody on that line? Should I do it? Should I not? They're thinking about it. What's the advice there to somebody thinking about making that move, but they can't make the final decision yet?
I say, man, you got to jump out there and do it, because at the end of the day, I've seen a lot of people second guess the decision that may change their lives for the rest of their lives. At the end of the day, it's a lot of procrastination, because that's what everybody around you doing. Everybody around you, they're second guessing and they're saying, I don't know. They got you second guessing. But if you know that this is what you want to do, whether it's music or whatever it is, you got to jump out there, because nobody's going to make you jump out there because they don't have the ability. But you know that you want to do it. You just got to do it. You got to wake up and say, this is it. You know, I did it and I see the success in it. My success may not be yours or the person watching this. So at the end of the day, it's just whatever you feel, you kind of got to go with it. Don't let the subconscious or the second guessing kill your dream or your hopes at the end of the day, because it will, and you'll be the person that says, oh man, I should have did this and I should have did that. That's why I say when I came, it was perfect timing.
Now, how often do you visit Detroit these days? How often do you go back?
I probably go back home maybe twice a year. I try to average about 2 times a year to go visit, and I got a lot of family there, and I got kids that I take to go see their family and their cousins and nephews and things of that nature. So I go back probably about 2 times a year.
What was it like for you growing up in Detroit? Can you paint that picture for us?
Yeah, it was pretty much how everybody grows up at the end of the day. It was a lot different. I look at it as a lot normal because I grew up there. A lot of people would say that was crazy or that it was a crazy upbringing, because at the end of the day, I grew up around people who was in the streets and doing different things where you kind of had to get it how you live. You know, at the end of the day, it was not a catered situation. You know, I grew up with my grandmother, so I didn't have my mother or my father at that point in my life when I was becoming a teenager. So it was kind of like me learning the streets and learning what I know and kind of trying to stay in school only for the sake of the elders that was around me. But at the end of the day, I was in the streets, and that's what kind of raised me. So that's where a lot of my mentality and a lot of my movements came from. And it's pretty much, I mean, that's the story for a lot of people, because it's not a close family thing. At the end of the day, you don't grow up like by the books. You kind of grow up in the streets as a black male, kind of in Detroit, in the inner city at least.
We'll break some of these details down. As far as your grandmother's concerned, which side, your mom's side or your father's side?
My mom's side.
Okay. And from what age to what age did your grandmother take care of you?
That was probably about 12 till about 17 when I joined the military at 18.
Why did your grandmother come in the picture at that time, that age for you?
Because my mom was out of the picture because she was doing drugs then and things of that nature, and my dad had just went to prison, and that's kind of his situation. So he was in prison and my mom was in the streets. So my grandmother she was raising all my siblings and everybody at the end of the day.
Sounds pretty tough.
Yeah, it was different, definitely.
How long did your dad have to do?
I think he ended up doing like 6 years.
Care to share for what?
For some robbing of stores and a bank and some other stuff.
Did you stay in communication with him during his prison bid?
A little bit. Not as much as I felt that I should have after I did mine. It was like I didn't understand. So at that point, when you don't understand something, you don't know. You know, I was young. I didn't really understand. I didn't know why. I didn't really understand the whole momentum of the situation at the end of the day. And later on in life, after I learned certain things and I grew up and I experienced certain things. I was like, damn, like the communication was real weak because I didn't understand at the end of the day. I didn't know that the communication, what it meant, you know. When I did my time, I had to do certain things to cope with the time, you know. The letters don't come, the phone calls don't come. Nobody can call you, you know, so it's like that's you reaching out. And a lot of times we don't know how to reach out because most of the time people are ashamed of that they're not there. So it was one of those type of situations.
Now, did you have some sort of resentment? Like, okay, you saw it in a different perspective after you did your own prison bit. Mm-hmm. And how long did you do prison for?
3 years.
Okay, you did 3 years. Can you say for what?
Yes, for drug trafficking.
Okay. So without you doing this prison time yet, just being a teenager and going through the motions, did you have some sort of resentment towards your father just because he was doing that time and that sort of thing, or no?
Yeah, a little bit, because I felt as if I needed him during certain times, and there was not a situation where I could call on him, or I even could think that it was like a situation where I knew he could help. It was situations where it was like, I know he's gone and I know he's gonna be gone. So it was just like, you gotta learn and figure a lot of things out on your own, which taught me a lot of things that maybe I wouldn't have had the experience had things been different. So at first, yes, I did have some resentment.
And then after you actually do prison yourself and you see the shoe on the other foot, how did you feel? Did that resentment dissipate?
That made me forgive him when I was in prison. That's when I forgave a lot of the stuff that happened within my life up until that point. Like, it was a lot of stuff that I had at the back of my chest, because at the end of the day, you got to think, when he left, that was when I was still in a position where I was always in trouble. So I was getting whoopings and I was getting beat up, different things of that nature. So it was like, you already feel some type of way because you're a kid. So you're getting disciplined the whole time. But you're getting disciplined, and then you go from getting disciplined to now he's out of the picture due to his own mistakes at the end of the day. And it was like, it was one of them things when I didn't even understand. You know, I didn't ever think that I would go to prison. So it was like, I didn't understand then, but then after I did my time, then it was like, okay, now I see why he was doing what he was doing, because he was trying to, of course, feed his family. He was trying to do certain things, and that's what made him do some of his actions after I learned the case and everything after it all boiled down.
At what age did you go to prison?
I was 21.
Now, when your dad was incarcerated, did you ever visit him physically?
No.
Just curious as to why. Was he the type that didn't want visits?
No, not even that. It was that I was young and I was in Detroit and he was all the way in Kansas City. So it was like at 12, somebody would have to take me. At 13, somebody would have to take me. At 14, somebody would have to, it's like it wasn't a situation where I was just going to go because I didn't understand as well. You know, it was like I was too young to even know. So it wasn't even a situation where it's like, hey, should I call him and then go try to see him? Or it just, I was young and I didn't understand the situation. So that never even crossed the playing field. So it wasn't even a factor.
That's a very tough time in a young man's world. That age, 12 to 18, because you did 6 years, right?
Yeah.
So 12 to 18. I mean, those are very pivotal. Those preteen, teenage years, very pivotal. Was there another male figure in your life?
Not really, besides my grandfather and my uncle. So they kind of took that role after, when I came and stayed with my grandmother. They kind of took that role, and I mean, they showed me a lot of stuff, but it was still one of those things that when you're young, you don't even understand. Yeah, I didn't understand their discipline because I didn't understand my dad's discipline. So it was like, when you can't understand that, it was just like, a lot of it was going in one ear and out the other, because it was like, I still had the right to be like, well, you ain't my dad, so you can't do this. You know what I mean? So it was me being young and dumb, not understanding, but at the end of the day, it was still points where I was like, nah, I'm going against everything. Nothing matters, you know, because I had that feeling of resentment, like, well, things ain't how they should be, so I'm not going to allow things to be how y'all want it to be type of situation.
What was it like when your dad touched down, came home, and you saw him for the first time?
I'm not even sure. I can't really remember the feeling or what I was going through at the time. So I don't really know.
You did see him though.
Yeah, I did see him. I think actually when he touched down, I still didn't see him until, I don't think I actually seen him until after I did prison time.
Oh wow.
So it was like he got out, but I don't think I think I did see him actually. No, I did go see him actually when he got out. I went to go see him, and it was different. It was one of those situations where, now it's coming back to me. It was one of those situations where it was like, what's next? Where do we go from here? Where do we build? Where do we pick up? But I was still lost. I was like, I don't know where to start. You know, it was a where do we start situation. And we tried to just get back into the groove of things, but I mean, it was just like, okay, I'm just here for the weekend. And I had so much other things on my mind and so many other things that I was doing that it was like, cool. It was a disconnect, but things were still there. And at the end of the day, it was like, this is my dad. So we bonded, and then we went about our ways.
When you did prison time, did he keep in contact with you, or you keep in contact with him?
Well, when I did prison time, he ended up going back.
Oh, wow.
So me and him was locked up again together. So there was another disconnect. So it wasn't even a situation where we could have done too much. I think maybe we tried to write each other once or twice. I can't remember for sure. But no, I didn't have any really contact with him.
Now, you were locked up simultaneously, but not in the same actual incarceration.
No. Yeah, we were both
location.
locked up in different locations for different reasons, but at the same time.
So did he go in right before you went in, or you went in first and then you found out he had gone?
I want to say he went a couple months before I had went. But that's when I was going through my case. So I knew I was going. It was just a matter of time. But I think he went a couple months before I went in.
How much more time did he have to do on that stint?
I want to say he did 3 years to that too. So I think he came home like a couple months before me, and then I came home. So it was like he left a couple months, and then he came home a couple months before me. So we did it about the same time.
So what was that like, seeing him after you both have done prison time this time? And now this time, shoes on the other foot, so you understand, you forgive, you have a different perspective. What was that like?
It was a complete different feeling. It was like, now I get it. I kind of understand. I kind of know what was going on. But it was still one of those things where it was like, now I got a whole bunch of stuff that I got to do, because I felt like I was so far behind, because I had just had 2 kids. I had just had a daughter, my first daughter, and then 5 months into her being born, I was going to prison. But my second daughter was in my baby mama's stomach at the time. So it was like, she was pregnant, we just had a kid, and I was going to prison. So it was a crazy situation. So I didn't even have time to think about all of the other things that went along with that, or even trying to build a relationship or anything. It was like, okay, this is what it is, we know what it is, and we just continue life.
Where are you at with your dad these days? What type of bond?
We're pretty cool at the end of the day. I mean, he calls, I talk to him, we chit chat. It's just a mutual relationship at the end of the day. It's not the best in the world, because we're still distant at a distance at the end of the way. But I mean, it's definitely not a bad relationship, because I have nothing negative about anything. So I don't feel any type of way because I'm so far into my own thing, and I've found a path and a vision. So I don't even have time to really go and dwell on old stuff. It's just like, hey, we're on some new stuff, and this is the wave.
Now, somebody watching this, let's say maybe they're a teenager, and they have a parent that's got to do some serious time. 6 years is serious. 3 years is serious. Circumstances could be different for everybody, but it's the first time, their parents going and they have to deal with this. Any general advice to someone watching this going through these type of motions right now?
I would really say, believe the people around you about your scenario, because most people, you will fall in those type of mentalities and experience that if you've seen it happen. And it's really one of them things that is just like, just stay headstrong. Don't get weak moments where you let peers and different people influence you to do the wrong things only because it's like you're lacking that discipline, or you're lacking something. You're lacking that love, that relationship from a father figure or whoever is in your life at that particular time. And you kind of gravitate to other things for that comfort. And those things could lead you in that same direction because your peers going to have way more influence than your parents, because at the end of the day, you think you're smarter than your parents during those times. So you're automatically saying to yourself, no, I'm better than X, Y, and Z, and I won't fall in the same loopholes. But at the end of the day, if you're out there fending for yourself, you definitely need help. And who can help you better than the streets during that time? And you're going to go actively be engaged with that. So I would say just stick to what you know and have a goal and take life serious, because it starts young at the end of the day. I didn't start taking life serious till I was 25, 24. Like the whole time before that, I'm honestly say I was playing because I took it for granted. Every day I was living for day to day. I wasn't living for 5 years, 10 years. When you're young, that's how you live, because you look at it like it don't matter. You don't know. You don't think that you're going to be here for 60 years. That's kind of like far-fetched. We don't think about that. We're just living for the day. And I would say just don't live for the day. Have plans, have goals. Do something with yourself. Get into something that's going to be positive so that you could change the world versus being another number.
Were you able to see, sounds like you missed the birth of one of your daughters because you were locked up. Did you see, that would have been the second one I think you missed?
Correct.
The first daughter, you were able to?
Yes, I was there for the first.
Okay.
And my last two.
But this second daughter that you had?
Yes.
You didn't get a chance to be there?
No.
How did you deal with that?
That was kind of crazy because it was like I was trying to be connected, but I completely missed 3 years of her life. So it was like when I got back, it was like, how do you make up that time? And while I was in there, I was realizing like there is no way to make up that time. She's going to experience things that I have no deal or no ideal that will go on, and there's no bringing that time back. So it was just like, I kind of dealt with it by saying that I'm going to get back out here and do what I need to do and become successful and get on my grind and go 10 times harder because of the step back that I had to take. And it was just a factor of me not being as disciplined or as focused as I needed to be. And I just came back with a real focus. Like that's how I brought that time back. That's how I dealt with it. I go hard every day because of them, because I know that I made a mistake and I lost time. So now it's like, it's not really making it up. It's just blending it and making it better. Because at the end of the day, I dealt with it a lot by saying, well, they won't really know that. That's too young for them to really understand. But that's all for debate, because I don't know about my 1 or 2 years of my life at the end of the day. So it was like I kind of dealt with it by saying maybe it won't affect them. But it definitely affected them at the end of the day.
How do you see the affection?
Oh, man, it's crazy. Like, they love me at this point. You know, it's like it's like I was never not there at this point because of these last 5 years of building that relationship back up. It's like peaches and cream. It was never a disconnect. Like when I got back, they were so young. It was like at first they were trying to figure out. Once they recognized that dad, it was over. It was like everything was back to normal. And from there, I mean, 5 years is a lot of time to rekindle a relationship when they're that young. They're still too young. So it's like now they're in a whole different, better place.
How did you find, how long after she was born, while you were locked up, did you find out she was literally born? Is that something you find out within 24 hours? Is that something?
Oh no, she was only a couple of months when I left. She was a couple of months, so she didn't have her till about 7 months after I was locked up. So what happened was she came and visited me. So I seen them, but it was a awkward situation. At the end of the day, I'm like, I'm here, you know. So it was like I seen them when they were young, but it still wasn't that I couldn't build a relationship because it was like I seen them for 30 minutes, and that was it.
No, but I mean, she gave birth to your second daughter while you were locked up.
Correct.
So what I'm saying is, how soon did you find out the actual news that she was born?
Oh, I want to say that same day.
Okay.
I think that same day.
How do they break the news to you in prison? Is it like a phone call you get from a loved one that says it's happened, or?
Nah, I actually called out. I knew that it was happening because I talked to her the day before and the day prior. You know what I mean? So we had a conversation level that was working at the end of the day. So I knew that she was going into labor. I talked to her that day that she was going into labor, and then when I called her the next day, it was like she was just born. So it was I had knowledge.
And you didn't see pictures. You didn't see pictures of her at all before you actually met her for the first time.
I'm not sure. I don't think so. I think I met her before I seen pictures.
Okay.
Because I think she set up a visit not too long after she had her.
Do you remember how long?
I don't. It may have been less than a couple weeks, maybe 2 weeks or so.
So when you actually, and what type of prison were you? State prison, federal prison?
Federal prison.
Okay, so federal prison. So did they have to were you that far away they had to come and visit you? They had to?
Yeah, they had to travel to come see me.
Different state?
Right. They were in North Carolina and I was in Kansas.
Okay, when they actually visit you, is it one of those things you gotta see her through a glass type of thing, or is it one of those things you can actually hold her, touch her, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I was able to touch her. I was able to hold her.
What was that moment like?
It was different. It was like I had another kid. It was one of them things that it was like I wish I could have left at that moment. Like, damn, if I could just leave and fix everything, I would trade a bunch of stuff just to fix that relationship and to fix my situation. Because at the end of the day, that 30 minutes, then they left, then I had nothing but to do but think. I just kept thinking, you know, what's going on, how they are. So it made me have to call more often and made me feel like, hey, I'm missing something. So it was like I missed a part, but I was trying to catch back up. But then I had to deal with that accordingly as well. And it was like, okay, I dealt with it through pictures and prayers. And that's how I dealt with it.
When you experienced the childbirth of the first daughter, was that an emotional time for you? Was that any less emotion, or, you know, in perspective to actually seeing your second daughter for the first time with a prison visit?
Yeah, no, it was emotional because that was my first child at the end of the day. So it was like I was excited. I had a lot of things going on, and it was just like I knew in that moment, like it was like she was gonna be good at the end of the day. I had done a lot of things to make sure that she was good and that she would be good. So it was like, it was crazy when it happened, because it was like, damn, I'm really having a kid, and this is my first kid. It's like, that's when I was young, and I was like, I'm gonna do everything for this kid. You know, I'm gonna take her there and do this and do it. So I had a whole bunch of goals that I had already preset, because it was like, this is a kid. I'm bringing a new kid in, and it was like that's how that kind of went.
But now this second time, how did that compare? This time you're not seeing her in a hospital, you're seeing her in a prison visit.
That was completely different. It was like I was at a down moment at the end of the day, so I couldn't even get the excitement, because it was one thing that I knew that they was gonna be straight because of what I had left previously, that I knew things was gonna be all right. But it was still that emotion there that was like, dang, I fucked up. I messed up, you know? Now I'm that same guy that I was mad at, you know? So then that had to bring back a whole nother judgment of character, and I was like, damn, I was just in that boat. I was that person. But I dealt with it by saying that they were too young. You know, it was like, okay, they're too young. It didn't affect them, hopefully. But I kind of, it was a mixed feeling. It was like, dang, I fucked up.
Somebody watching this, okay, maybe they are locked up, right? And they have to deal with missing a childbirth. Circumstances could be different for everybody, but any general advice here for that person that has to deal with coming home, you know, new kid, but they weren't there from the very start, so to speak?
I would tell them to stay focused. Like, it's one of them things that it's kind of hard to even say what a person's situation will be at the end of the day. They may experience something that they probably didn't want to experience. So it's like, it's hard to say what you should do when you come home, or what you should do when, it's one of those things that you just got to go with your first mind. It's not going to be an easy situation, because you're going to get that first reaction. And my first reaction was like, the connection wasn't there. You're at a disconnecting point because you haven't been there. I can take you around a kid you've been around, and they're going to act different. They're going to be like, they ain't really with it. Especially if you ain't been there and you're looking for this bonding moment, and it's not going to happen that first day, that second day, that third day. It's going to take time. So you got to already know that you got to be prepared for that time to happen, and not be thinking that it's just going to happen as soon as you get out. The kid's going to be back under your wing and rowdy. Nah, it's like you got to be prepared for the disconnect to build the connection back, because a kid is a kid. You could not be around a kid for a week and they'll start acting different. So you talk about years at a time, and they only see you once a month. They don't know what or who you really are. To you to them, I mean, you're a stranger at the end of the day, and you got to understand that you're a stranger for that moment. But that bond will be built, because if you take care of your responsibility, everything gonna come back together.
Just curious, after that initial visit from your second-born daughter, did you get any more visits from them before you were released from prison?
Yeah, I think I got like 2 more visits before I end up getting out.